Let's take a look at example 7 first. They want us to find the first 4 derivatives of cosine of x. So if I have f of x is equal to cosine of x, we can think of this as the 0th derivative. You're not taking any derivatives, right? So it's the 0th derivative. But when I take f prime of x, that's going to be the first derivative. So I'm going to put a first there. And cosine has a co in front of it, so it's negative. And the derivative of cosine is its cousin, which is sine. So we have negative sine of x. Now I want to take the second derivative. So when I take the second derivative, I'm going to put second over here like this. And then the derivative of sine is just cosine, right? The derivatives are their cousins. You just worry about the sine separately. So sine, the negative stays there. The derivative of sine is cosine. So we get negative cosine of x like this. Okay. Now I want to find the third derivative. What's the third? So when I do that, the negative is going to stay there. The derivative of cosine is negative sine of x. So this becomes a negative times a negative is a positive. So it becomes sine of x. Does that make sense? And then let's calculate the fourth derivative. If I took the fourth derivative, remember we write the fourth derivative as a f with like a parentheses up there. The 4 in parentheses, that means take the derivative 4 times. The derivative of sine is its cousin cosine of x. So does anybody see something interesting happening? What just happened that's interesting, if anything?
Goes back.
It goes back. In other words, these guys here are the same. In other words, this repeats, the cycle repeats every 4 derivatives. This looks terrible. Oh my God. Derivatives. Okay. So if I say, what's the 4th derivative? You say cosine. If I said, what's the 8th derivative? What would you say, Reagan? 8th derivative, what would you say?
Sine.
You would say cosine because it repeats every 8, every 4. Does that make sense? So 4 plus 4 is 8. The 4th derivative should be cosine. What do you think the 12th derivative should be?
Cosine.
What about the 16th derivative?
Cosine.
What about the 20th derivative? It's cosine. What about the 21st derivative?
Minus sine.
Minus sine. Right? Because if you did 20, you'd be back here, and then 21 would be here. What if I asked you 32? Because 32 is divisible by 4, you're back at cosine. If I said, what's the 33rd derivative? You got to go one more. That'd be negative sine. Okay. 35 would be this guy. 36 is this guy. I'm sorry, 33, 34, 35, and then 36 takes you back to cosine. Okay. So now we are actually in a position to do example 8. If I know that it repeats every 4 derivatives, then all I need to do is I need to take 74, I need to divide it by 4, I need to find the remainder. So let's do some long division. So put a 1 here. 1 times 4 is 4. I subtract, I get 3. Bring down the 4 like this. And then I can put an 8 here. 8 times 4 is 32. So then I get 2 over here. And because 2 is less than 4, that 2 is my remainder. So the remainder is 2. So the reason why I wrote these numbers over here on the side is the remainder corresponds with which trig function we're going to have here. So since the remainder is 2, this means that the 74th derivative of cosine of x is going to be the same as the second derivative of cosine of x, which is equal to negative cosine of x. Somehow I wrote myself into a corner. Hold on. So that's our answer. Does that make sense to everybody? Is there any questions? Let me ask you one more bonus. If I wanted you to find the 2021 derivative of cosine of x, what would that be? Does anybody have any feeling? If you do, you could type your answer in the chat box. Jason says negative sine x. So does Joe. I agree. So does Rocky. I agree. 2021 is not so bad to work with, right? Because 2020 is perfectly divisible by 4, right? So it's like 2021 is equal to 2020 plus 1. So this is our remainder. This guy is divisible by 4. So this is the same thing as just the derivative of cosine of x, which is just negative sine x, as you guys said. Okay. All right. Great.